Hey, it's New Thought Talk. I'm your host, Reverend Steve Walling from the Spiritual Awareness Center located in Fresno, California. Fresno, the heart of the Central Valley, the heart of the great state of California. And it is a great day today. I hope you claim this day, this gift that was given to you to experience, to express in by the divine principle, that which we call God, first cause, principle, source, however you relate to the creator of all that is. Welcome to the day. Welcome to the good. I'm glad you're here with us today. We've been going through Ernest Holmes' book, which is currently titled The Art of Life, but used to be called This Thing Called Life. And as we've gone through it, we're touching on the various things that Holmes has presented into this. Today I'm at chapter 9, and I'm not sure exactly how much into chapter 9 I'm going to get, because I want to kind of preface it before we move forward with a couple of things that I think as we get into the chapter, which may end up being next week or latter part of today and into next week. But I want to lay this foundation because there's some things that we as New Thought, religious science believers oftentimes overlook. Sometimes it's part of what we accept without giving much thought to it, and yet it's incredibly powerful and important, not only in our personal spiritual journey, but in our relationship to the divine and our relationship to the exterior life expressing. It's just, anyway, you'll understand as we move forward. Chapter 9 opens up, Ernest Holmes writes, he says, "The good things of life for which we seek are but echoes of the true self knocking at the door of consciousness." Echoes of the true self knocking at the door of consciousness. What is that true self? Well, that true self is, well, it's not unhappiness, is it? It's not limitation, is it? It's not all the other stuff that you can compile, pile, collect, put aside under the banner of bad, evil, negative, however you want to look at it. The true self is the self that is the expression of that which expresses not only through us, but as us. And that is what we call God or first cause. We are living expressions of God, which means that as we look into our life experience, we look into our life experience with an understanding that God is not the guy somewhere. God is not an individual that gets angry. God is not anything that can be separated from us. But God is, when we talk about God being everywhere present, we literally mean everywhere. And so as we sit here, as I sit here and you sit out there, it is that divine principle. It is that first cause. It is God that is sitting here expressing, listening, speaking, understanding, and everything in between. But yet we get caught up in life because we're told that life is suffering. And that was the Buddha's take, and I spoke about that in a couple of previous shows as we're going through this book. But I want to touch on that a little more deeply today. I want to touch on this concept of an everywhere present divine beingness that we call God. What does that mean to us? And I want to talk a little bit about this thing called prayer and our relationship to prayer, to our prayer life as we go forward. Holmes says here, everyone seeks an inward sense of certainty without which happiness and satisfaction are impossible. In order to get to that inward certainty, we have to be certain that life is not suffering. And yet, spiritual teachings for eons and beyond have referenced, including, when you go back to the Buddha, all life is suffering. But in order for us to have a certainty of good, an experience of good as our life expression, that's one of the first things that we need to address. But before we address that through Dr. Holmes, I'm going to go, in the beginning, early part of the 20th century, there was a Christian theologian, minister, his name was Harry Emerson Fosdick. And he wrote quite a few books, and several of them I would highly recommend if you are serious about having an understanding of the evolution of the understanding of God, of the understanding of what humanity is. God, he's got some great stuff. It relates to the Bible and so on. But anyway, I want to touch on this because he's talking about how in the Bible, the Old Testament's all about suffering. But when Jesus comes on the scene, this is something that oftentimes people, they don't get, they don't understand. And Fosdick, he writes, he says, clearly, the abstract idea about suffering may be found paralleling each other in the two testaments, the Old and the New. The resultant seeming identity is misleading. There is throughout the Christian scriptures a positive enthusiasm in the midst of trouble. I overflow with joy, Paul wrote, in our afflictions, which is distinctive. Not the negative endurance of trouble, but a positive use, a positive experience, not its explanation as part of its purpose in the future, damnation, trouble, so on. And he goes on to enlighten that concept a little bit more, but I wanted to share that because when Holmes says, and we're going to get to this in a moment, that humanity has learned all that it should know from suffering, he's right. And he wasn't alone in his claiming this. And it wasn't a claim made exclusively through New Thought individuals that were trying to put a happy face on this this new concept, this new philosophy that stated that there's a power and a presence for good in the universe that we can use, that we can avail ourselves to it, and that in so doing, that we will experience a life substantially different than what heretofore had been taught. So we go back here, and Holmes writes, he says, and this is in chapter 6 of The Science of Mind, what we call the textbook, on page 107. He says, the world is beginning to realize that it has learned all that it should through suffering and pain. Surely there can be no intelligence, with a capital I, meaning divine intelligence, in the universe that wishes man to be sick, suffer pain, be unhappy, and end in oblivion. Surely if God or universal intelligence is imbued with goodness, then it could not ordain that man should ultimately be other than a perfect expression of life. Think about that. A perfect expression of life. That potential, that possibility is not something that is written in a book for you to hope for, but something that is potentially available to each and every one of us, that we live life. Well, how do we do that? I mean, that sounds kind of difficult, sounds kind of hard, doesn't it? I mean, we're so used to all the chaos in the world, and we're so used to being told no, or you can't, or you're limited because of where you were born, how you were born, who you were born as, and the list goes on and on and on. And then you add on top of that how in society today we seek to self-identify in ways that separate us out from the unity, the oneness of God. Now, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't celebrate our individualism. Absolutely we should. But we shouldn't do so and throw out what the master teacher laid out as the two great commandments, to love God with all that we are. And in that, because God expresses not only through us, but as us, that means we love ourselves with all that we are. And we love our neighbor as ourself, which means we can be individuals, but we love our neighbor as ourself because we're all part of the greater oneness. We don't love our neighbor but hold them separate from us. We love our neighbor because we're all in this oneness, this unity. And it becomes important as we move forward, as we understand this, because as we seek to unfold and to develop our specific consciousness, to reframe the discussion, if you will, so that we are open to the concept that we can live life, experience life at a higher, greater degree of livingness, goodness, health, happiness, peace, and harmony, because that is available to each and every one of us. That is our divine purpose in living this life. It's a great idea, but it's only a great idea if we have access to it, and we do. And that's what Science of Mind and Spirit is about, and various other New Thought teachings. I just happen to believe that Ernest kind of put it in the most concise and best way. He goes on to say, we have shown that man's nature is the same as God's, as the divine's nature. We should have no intellectual difficulty in realizing that an infinite intelligence could not make an automatic individuality, and this explains why man suffers on his own road to self-discovery. We suffer because we hold beliefs individually. We hold beliefs of limitation. We hold beliefs of toughness, of miserableness, and you can go on and on and on. And it's done unto us as we believe. And when we come to New Thought, when we come to Science of Mind and Spirit, and a minister or a teacher or someone tells us that we can experience life at a greater and higher degree, we go, oh, isn't this wonderful? But it just seems to be always beyond our grasp, and it doesn't have to be. But there are certain laws, if you will, certain understandings that we have to, because it's all in mind, it's all in consciousness. We can't have a deceptive consciousness when we seek to move forward to a greater good. We're going to take our first break. I'll see you when we come back.
Ghost Golf is Fresno's most spectacular family entertainment center. It's frightening how much fun you'll have on our 18-hole indoor haunted graveyard course. Skeletons welcome you, but watch out. all sorts of creatures may come to life. Ghost Golf is perfect for scary good parties, so book yours today. You'll get free plays at the Mummy Shooting Gallery, arcades, and air hockey. Check out our party and weekday specials online and like us on Facebook. Come play at family-friendly Ghost Golf. Good times will haunt you.
At McDermott Counseling, you will receive the highest level of care and a welcoming, safe space in which to discuss your most personal issues. Our therapists go above and beyond for you. Call 559-280-5756 or visit McDermottCounseling.com to find a caring therapist who best suits your needs. Diane Ainsworth's books of poetry and scriptures are available at CondeoPress.com and as ebooks at Amazon.com. Diane hopes the words in her books will convey the unconditional love Jesus has for you. Learn more at godsinspirationsblog.wordpress.com and get a copy of Diane's books today.
Hello everyone, my name is Miss G. I offer fun and affordable promotion and advertisement on my talk show. It is called Fresno Vibes. We talk, we play awesome music. I also feature a bunch of different bartenders from different places. I like to have restaurants. I like to have any event, any kind of fun stuff. Contact me at rmgmissg@gmail.com and we will have so much fun and we will promote your business, promote your event right here on my show. So contact me. We'll have fun. Thank you.
With Organic Pastures Raw Milk, you're getting a product that has been meticulously managed from grass to glass. From our pastures to our dairy, creamery, and distribution, we work hard to produce a product that is safe and clean for you.
Got lactose intolerance or dairy allergies? Discover delicious raw milk and discover dairy the way it's supposed to be. We provide tours and would love to see you. Come visit the cows, watch the milking, the cheese being made, and learn all about raw milk. We're just 20 miles south and west of Fresno, California. Call to schedule a tour at 559-846-9732.
The Saga of Bridget and Amanda by Carol Love Forbes brings to life the struggles of historical women in early America. Find the Saga of Bridget and Amanda on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and order your copy today.
Welcome back to New Thought Talk. I am your host, the Reverend Steve Walling. Moving forward, okay, we're dealing with the Art of Life, this thing called life by Ernest Holmes, chapter 9, and I'm going to pretty much be right in the first page or two throughout the show today. I want to go back to what I read earlier. Everyone seeks an inward sense of certainty, without which happiness and satisfaction are impossible. And I talked about this idea of certainty. Certainty, we can only be certain of something that we accept as true, that we create within our own belief system as being so. That's part of our spiritual journey. You know, I've said it many times, if you pick up a copy of the Science of Mind, the paperback, it says A Philosophy of Faith, A Way of Living, or I may have faith, philosophy, a way of anyway, the thing is, it is a way of living, and we have to align ourselves with principle in order to live in these terms where we can experience with certainty what it is that we believe and know and see it demonstrated in our life. He says we all seek an inner awareness of something greater than we are, something so complete that we can find completion in it, something so vast that we may anticipate exploring its nature through endless eternities. Go back again. An awareness of something greater than we are, something so complete that we find completion in it. That we find completion in it. That's awesome. You know, the thing is, when in the previous sentence where he says everyone seeks an inward sense of certainty, it's an amazing thing. Within most, I say most because sometimes not everybody, and there are reasons for it, but most people have a sense within themselves of something greater than who and what they are. This is characteristic of humanity. You might say that this is one of the seeds that the divine principle that God planted within the beingness of humanity, that we would seek because we believe that there's something greater than we are. And so the evolution of the idea of what the divine is, what God is, and it is an evolution of this idea. One of the things in the book that I just quoted earlier from Harry Fosdick, he outlines how the concept of God evolved through the teachings in the Old Testament to the intertestament periods and then through the New Testament. Because the God in the New Testament, as Jesus taught, is not the God that was taught in Genesis. And that's a story for another day, but just understand that the idea of God has evolved. Just as our idea of our role in the universe, humanity's role, has also evolved. We're very intimately connected, if you will. Our journey, humanity's journey, has been this discovery of the divine, of our own individual human expression, the relation between the divine and us. It kind of like our understanding of what God's understanding of humanity is, okay? And it's, our understanding as individuals of how the divine principle, if you will, understands who and what we are. Now, that's not a understanding that is like God's thinking, okay, who is Joe or so-and-so? It's more of an expression of consciousness, if you will. And that's what we are. That's what we're here to do. We are here to express livingness, consciousness, at ever greater and higher degrees, higher levels. And so we are within ourselves. Every individual seeks an inward, or has an inward sense of certainty that we seek to express at higher, greater degrees of livingness. And you see it, that's our history, humans' history, and we move forward. He says, he goes on to say here, in this, that we all seek an inner awareness of something greater than who and what we are, something so complete that we can find completion in it, something so vast that we can anticipate exploring its nature through endless eternities. That's why we're here. That's the journey. That's the way of living that we as individual beings are created to live, but we haven't been, to date, to this point in time, we haven't been enlightened, if you will, as the human race to that purpose. Because as we've come into the world, individually, collectively, we've come into a world that shares doubt and anger and a belief in evil and limitation and so on. And because that's what we believe, that's what we accept, that becomes our reality. And it's tied into what we call race consciousness and human consciousness. And it's even, and this is something more current, if you will, than Holmes, but geneticists today have shown that beliefs of some of our ancestors can be expressed in us, that we have no other source of those beliefs. Maybe they're not moms, maybe they're grandmas or great-grandmas, and yet here today we have those. And they're tied to our genetics, our DNA. And it makes sense. But what also makes sense and what also we've learned is that we can change. We can change it. It's not necessarily simple or easy, but we can do it. But starting to do it starts with a choice. Having the ability to make that choice starts with understanding and information. That's why I do what I do here. You deserve to have the information available to you that you may make a choice for yourself to live a better life, a greater life, in a higher degree of livingness. And, I highly encourage you to reach out to a Center for Spiritual Living that used to be Religious Science, but that's their that's the name they go by today. Or there's other New Thought sects. You can Christ Unity, Universal Temple in Chicago for Better Living, Divine Science. You can find them online. Search, look for them. Begin to learn. Begin to seek out information for yourself so that you can make choices. That you can, when you begin to accept that maybe life was not meant to be suffering. Yes, that historically it has been, but it doesn't have to be. And it comes with a choice. And we're here to make that choice, to get that information, to put that information into practice in our lives that we may express higher and greater degrees. Holmes goes on, he says, now this is in The Science of Mind, he says, we arrive at the conclusion that while bondage is an experience, there is a reality in which bondage is not real. And I read that, I believe, last week. Bondage is an experience. Evil is an experience, but there's a reality in which that is not real. That reality awaits humanity, awaits us at a level at which, when we, generally speaking, get our consciousness together, that we can change not only the outlook of humanity, but we can change the actual expressing and livingness and demonstration in the world. But we have to do that, okay? So, in order to do that, we have to, like I say, we have to understand that life is not suffering, and yet we experience suffering. But we also have to understand in this the evolutionary, through consciousness, role that humanity plays, but also our understanding of the divine, of God. And on page 131, Holmes says, man's idea of deity evolves with his other ideas. After a belief in many gods, he comes to realize there is but one mind, one spirit, back of all manifestation, one spirit or self-conscious life acting through the medium of the one mind or subjective law, producing many manifestations. Multiplicity comes from unity without breaking up the unity as a whole. And we are that multiplicity. We are that individuality. And yet we are that unity also. But in order to express the vast power of that unity, we have to begin to claim it for ourselves. Because as I've said many times, and particularly through this series, that we have to know that the world does not change, the outside does not change because we tell it to change. But the world, the outside, does change as we change within ourselves. And so we need that knowledge to build those beliefs, to create that faith, to move forward to that. So I'm going to go back here. He says, in this, he says, so it is, okay. He's talking about how things have changed. He said, so it is with our life. Its source is an infinite sea of energy. The source of our life, individual life, is a sea of infinite energy, of power, of love, and of wisdom. That which connects the outward man with this source is his inward life. That which connects the outwardness with this, with source, with God, with creation, with demonstration, with manifestation, is this inward. Okay, this is where it's at in this in this inward life. He says those inward thoughts and feelings which make up his or her, our consciousness. In other words, if we choose to hold a consciousness that holds angst, judgment, hatred, belief in evil, belief in limitation, ad infinitum with all the negative stuff, then that's what we will see expressed in life. But we don't need to. People don't know oftentimes they don't need to. And even people that know don't realize exactly what don't need to means in their life. It's a journey. It is a way of living this. It's a skill. It's a process. It takes a commitment. Okay? He says, this consciousness is twofold. He said, we have a conscious consciousness and a subconscious consciousness. The former constitutes the thoughts and movements of everyday life. We get that, right? The subconscious is the sum total of all our conscious states plus the influence of inherited tendencies and the accumulated thought of race mind. And that's what I spoke of a little bit earlier, okay? But, it's interesting. If you read the textbook, Holmes talks about the subjective mind. And in here he's talking about the subconscious mind. In a sense, he's talking about the same thing. This was written in 1938. This was written in 1948. In that 10 years, humanity learned a whole lot more about the subconscious mind. Holmes began to incorporate that in his teachings. It's not that his teachings changed, because it didn't. The teachings hold, but a lot more could be incorporated, if you will, in what he taught as he began to address it in the context of the day that he wrote this, okay? He says, the vast accumulation pushed back into the subconscious mind is what the psychologist deals with for the whole problem of modern psychology is the subconscious. What we hold in the subconscious, subjective mind. One, we have to move away from the concept that our mind is contained within our head, within our brain, because it's not. Even if you want to step out of religious science at this moment, modern neuroscience is trying to figure out exactly where the mind exists, because they realize that it doesn't exist within the brain. There are a lot of brain functions that affect the mind, but the brain is not the mind. The mind is so much more. The subjective mind, subconscious mind. Holmes talks about in the textbook, and if you've been taught in religious science this concept of the subjective mind, it is the repository of beliefs, the repository of memories. It holds so much. Our interaction with divine is on that subjective level, with God, if you will. Our relationship to race consciousness is at that level. It's immense in so many ways, and yet we have little or very little recognition of it as we go through our day-to-day life experience. But it's right there with us, if you will, and so much it is tied to the expression of our life experience, because therein lies so many of the beliefs that we hold that we're not aware of that we hold. And beliefs are creative. It's done unto us as we believe. So when we experience things in our life that we say, well, I don't really believe that, or I don't want to, it doesn't come from the outside. It comes from within. If we're experiencing chaos, trouble, turmoil, okay, we got to go within. We got to do our work, if you will. That's what Science of Mind and Spirit is all about. Teaching those tools that we can utilize in creating our life experience and expression such that we live our purpose to live at greater, higher degrees of livingness. So it's time for our next break. I'll see you when we come back.
With Organic Pastures Raw Milk, you're getting a product that has been meticulously managed from grass to glass. From our pastures to our dairy, creamery, and distribution, we work hard to produce a product that is safe and clean for you.
Got lactose intolerance or dairy allergies? Discover delicious raw milk and discover dairy the way it's supposed to be. We provide tours and would love to see you. Come visit the cows, watch the milking, the cheese being made, and learn all about raw milk. We're just 20 miles south and west of Fresno, California. Call to schedule a tour at 559-846-9732.
The Saga of Bridget and Amanda by Carol Love Forbes brings to life the struggles of historical women in early America. Find the Saga of Bridget and Amanda on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and order your copy today.
You enter this door with expired tags. Beyond is another dimension, a dimension of regulations, a dimension of long waits. You have reached the registration zone. What looks like an ordinary shop is actually Mitchell Smog, located in the heart of the Tower District, a few minutes from the DMV. Mitchell Smog offers your vehicle a STAR-certified smog inspection. So remember Mitchell Smog when you need to pass through the registration zone.
Christy Majors is your local real estate connection. With a solid, hardworking team, traditional listings, short sales, probate listings, and foreclosures are treated in a personal and caring way and close in a timely fashion. Since 2009, Team Majors has closed more than $75 million worth of homes all over California. Reliable and trustworthy, Christy and her team will go the extra mile for every client, whether selling or buying a home. So give Team Majors a call at 559-464-5606 or visit teammajors.com.
After a tough day at the track, cleaning up can be a time-consuming task. That's why we use Extreme Cleaner, the non-toxic, biodegradable, multi-purpose cleaner and degreaser. Extreme Cleaner cuts through even the toughest of grease and grime. Fast. Great for cleaning tools and work surfaces. Extreme Cleaner. Tough on grime, safe on the environment. Visit extremecleaner.com to find a retailer near you.
When you experience flooding in your home, you need to call Clean Master Emergency Flood Service at 559-213-9430. After soaking in water for only 45 minutes, carpet starts to come apart. Clean Master Emergency Flood Service can help, and not just with carpet repair. They also offer carpet cleaning, upholstery cleaning, carpet installation, and more. Call Clean Master Emergency Flood Service, and they'll be there in 60 minutes. Call 559-213-9430.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Welcome back to New Thought Talk. As I want to kind of revisit just a little bit, because I want to be clear on this idea when we talk about suffering. It's not that we're not going to experience things in our life that we will find overwhelming, that may set us back. Life is about the livingness. The livingness is about moving forward. In that process, we're going to experience things that may pull from us on an emotional level. But this is where our understanding of God, divine principle, comes in. Oftentimes, it's very easy to say, well, you got a bigger God than the problem. Yeah, it is. But if you're right in the middle of it, like that doesn't do a whole lot. Even if you've been in this philosophy for a long time, wrapping your mind around an experience that is seemingly devastating and saying, it's not suffering, I'm not going to suffer, is kind of oxymoronic. But, and this is part of the understanding. It's just like when we talk about the idea, the concept that we create the world within ourselves that we want to see expressed, that it's not about going out in the world telling it how it needs to behave in order for us to experience happiness or harmony in our life. People don't, it doesn't make sense to people. They want to go out and change the world for the better, and I understand that. But what they're going to do is they're going to go out and they're going to enforce on the world something that is of their individuality, of their perspective, that may not necessarily work for other people in the world. And it's not that everybody has to align themselves with what we believe. It's that as we align ourselves with divine principle, everybody will align themselves, and everybody aligns themselves with that. We will believe many individually, distinctly different things, and yet somehow it will work in the world as a whole, and the world will be a better world, a better place to live in. We have to move through this as we do this. The idea of suffering, it's kind of like when you're dealing with a child and you take something from them and they cry and you tell them that it's for their good, and of course they're not going to believe you. They're going to cry, and you might feel like a heel when you do it, but it might be something that is not necessarily very good for them, and in fact it could hurt them. Now, when you lose something in your life that is special to you, whether it be a spouse or a child or something like that, when you confront that within yourself, I can tell you there's a lot of stuff that goes on. It's a process working through it. There's a whole industry that's grown up about grief processing. But we can, believe it or not, we can actually get to a point to where grief does not have to be a part of our reality. I know that sounds kind of out there, and maybe it's beyond the ability of most people to express right now, but it's not beyond the capability of humanity to get to that point. That's what we're called to do. Understanding, when we look at how the concept, the idea of God has evolved, okay, there's also the idea of humanity that's evolved. And maybe I'll take some time and go into both those things, because besides the fact that it's very interesting, it lays a powerful foundation about where we're at today. But where we're at today is not an end point. Where we're at today is just a way stop on the entire journey. It's time for humanity to redefine our understanding of what, when we talk about first cause or principle or God, to redefine on a large scale what that means, not only what it means, what it is, and what it means to humanity as a whole. Just like the concept of God was redefined between the Old Testament and the New Testament. It was an evolving process that came to that point. But by the time that the master teacher began teaching, and there is a lot of teaching and belief and dogma that has grown up about the last aspect and part of his life as being the central focus of his life. And it's not that what he taught was necessarily shunned aside, but it wasn't embodied, utilized, understood in the context in which he taught it, you know. And today we have the ability, the capability of doing that. And if we do that, then we change God concept. We change the concept of who and what humanity is. And we change within that our beliefs. As we change our beliefs, we change the world. And in changing the world, you know, it's like my mind just kind of goes in 50,000 different directions, because there's so much there for us, for all of us, of love, peace, harmony, goodness, abundance. But to share that in a coherent way, I haven't quite wrapped my mind around it, but this is what I've been trying to do through teaching some of these things that Dr. Holmes wrote, and looking at it from his context at his time, and then bringing that up to where we live today, what we live today. He says, this understanding of, and I'll move on for this shortly, but this understanding of like suffering, he says, we do not say that man cannot sin or make mistakes, right? He says he is thereby automatically punished. In the mistake is the punishment. Okay. As long as he continues to make mistakes, he will be in bondage. But the bondage is not real to the universe, and sin is not real to God, because God's not a scorekeeper. Again, understanding that as we look at God today, as we understand what God is today and what humanity is today, this whole thing, the context changes, the dimensions change, the outcome changes, and life itself, not only individual life, but life on the planet, including the planet as a whole. I've said this before, as individuals, as we shift our consciousness within ourselves and create that greater good, that greater world within ourselves, we create the greater world outside of ourselves. At some point, there is a level of percentage of populations, if you understand, kind of the 100th monkey concept, Maharishi effect concept. Look them up if you don't know what they are. But there is a percentage of humanity that once they get it at some level, and that doesn't mean that they have to be a religious scientist. They can be a Christian. They can be a follower of the Vedic religions. They can be Jainists, Taoists, Islamists, whatever. Okay, it's not about what I believe versus what you believe. It's about an understanding of our relationship as individuals to the divine principle, God, Allah, whatever you want to call it. And as we realize that as humanity within ourselves, we shift, we'll change the world in its entirety. I have no doubt. I believe that. But for us today, talking about this, we have to understand that our relationship with divine principle, with God, is part and parcel. Our prayer is part and parcel of that relationship. But we don't look at prayer in the old sense, okay? And there is an old sense. But something I found in doing some research on this, it seems that prayer, the concept of prayer, is another one of those things that is apparently a very natural expression of consciousness throughout humanity. And if you think about it, where is it that you don't see prayer or some kind of communication to something greater, higher than, whether it be through tribal ceremonies, whether it be through individual prayer, whatever. It's been there, and it is there today. Even individuals that may not have a God definition within themselves, they still speak within themselves, even if they call it self-talk. Well, who's doing the listening, okay? And who answers? Where does that come from? And you don't need to answer that. I don't need to answer it. It lives and exists within each and every person that has that understanding. Okay, so Holmes, he says laws governing prayers. And he says most men who believe in God believe in prayer. And that's pretty much been borne out by the research today. He says, but our idea of prayer changes as our idea of God changes. Humanity's idea of God, as it has evolved, so has our concept of prayer. And he's going to go into and explain what in religious science, how we understand prayer as affirmative treatment. But I want to move forward. I'm looking at the clock here. Okay. I want to move forward to this idea that when we participate in this, he says, I'm going to go down here. He says, I'm going to start here. There's a true perception of spiritual power. The power is no longer I, but the Father who dwelleth in me. Could we conceive of Spirit, or God, as being incarnate in us, while at the same time being ever more than that which is incarnated? Not. Okay. He said would we not expand spiritually and intellectually? Would not our prayers be answered before they were uttered? The kingdom of God is within you. When we become conscious of our oneness with universal good, beliefs in evil, sin, sickness, limitation, and death tend to disappear. Within ourselves, our experience in the outer world, these things change. As they change for each of us, they change for all. As we lift ourselves up, we bring all of humanity in the world. You think that you're just one individual speck on this big dirt rock, but you're not, and you're important. When we seek to find things to make ourselves important, we basically define our importance out of ourselves. He says, we shall no longer ask amiss, supplicating as though God were not willing, begging as though he were withholding. There's no 911 call to God who may or may not answer. God lives, consciousness lives, good. You can call it the Christ within God. It's right here. It's within ourselves. That's where we go. When we pray, yes, we're in our conscious mind, we're speaking, or maybe even verbally, we're speaking our word, and there's a law that responds. And it responds through our subconscious, our subjective mind. It's there when we hold beliefs that are life affirming, that seek to express our life at a higher, greater degree of livingness that is expressed. And as we speak our word, one of the things we're doing is we are reframing that concept within our own subconscious, subjective mind. And we can do it. He says, this is a quote from Jesus. He says, if ye abide in me and my words abide in you, you shall ask what you will, and it shall be done unto you. This gives great light on an important law governing the answering of prayer. Abiding in him, and this is key. He says, means having no consciousness separate from what he says is his consciousness, or God's consciousness, or the divine's consciousness, or first cause consciousness, or source consciousness, or just consciousness, okay? However you understand that. He says, nothing in our thought which denies the power and the presence of spirit, okay? Yes, we can readily see why prayers are answered when we are abiding in him. He said, nothing in our thought which denies the power and the presence of spirit. Again, when we want to see greater good expressed in our life, we have to, in consciousness, create greater good. And that doesn't mean having a nice rosy picture. It means, how do we see our neighbors? How do we see ourselves? How do we see our relationship with the universe? It's there where we align ourselves with the divine. It's there where that which abides within us can connect with us in a way to respond to us. The law responds to the words we speak at the level of our belief, and we can move forward. He says, again, we read, whatsoever you shall ask in my name will I do. He says, this sounds simple at first, and boy, this catches a lot of people. He says, but it is another profound statement like unto the first. Its significance lies in the phrase, in my name. In his name means in his nature. If our thought is unsullied as the mind of God, if we are recognizing our oneness with God, we cannot pray for other than good for all mankind, all men. We have no enemies. We have no other. Maybe sometimes we have to establish boundaries. And I've said this many times. Healthy boundaries are good boundaries. But we always must remember that whatever exists on the other side of that boundary, and even the boundary itself, is still a creation of the divine. We, in order to create within ourselves a greater understanding of a greater good, must create that greater good, align ourselves with that greater good within ourselves. It's awesome. It really is. He says, if our thought is unsullied as the mind of God, if we are recognizing our oneness with God, we cannot pray for other than the good of all men. In such prayer, we should not dwell upon evil or adversity. The secret of spiritual power lies in a consciousness of one's union with the whole and of the availability of good. And God is accessible to all, to you, to me, that we may experience and express life at a higher and greater degree. Life will come at the speed of life. There will be issues, but we don't have to suffer. We may have to struggle. We may have to move forward, but when we live in a consciousness of the knowingness of God expressing as us, knowingness that life is infinite, it's not limited, knowingness that there's a greater good to be had and experienced, we can begin to move forward. And instead of suffering, we look to the future with an expectation of even greater and better good. We look forward with an expectation to experience a higher degree. We may have sadness. We may have feelings that are not real happy or encouraging in the moment, but with a greater knowingness that we're moving forward, with a greater knowingness of that greater good. We are, metaphorically speaking, wrapped in the arms of that which will never leave us, will never abandon us, will always be there for us, will always provide for us at the level of our belief as we open ourselves up, as we understand. We'll take our last short break and we'll come back. Hi, I'm the host of New Thought Talk, Reverend Steve Walling, and I want to take a moment today and give you an opportunity to support our ministry, support our show. You can do that through a PayPal payment. You send the payment through PayPal to the email address of Madera, MADERASAC @gmail.com. If you don't have a PayPal account, you can go down below the link and you can find where you can enter a debit or credit card. I want to thank those that have supported us and those that will continue to support us. You have a great day. Bye.
This segment is brought to you by Mike Briggs Properties. The recession's over. It's now safe to sell your home. Call Mike Briggs Properties.
If your home floods, who will you call? When your house springs a leak, it's time to call Clean Master Emergency Flood Service at 559-213-9430. Clean Master will be there in 60 minutes to start fixing your home. And Clean Master bills your insurance directly, saving you the hassle because you've got enough to worry about. Clean Master also offers carpet and upholstery cleaning, carpet repair, pet odor removal, and more. Remember, Clean Master Emergency Flood Service, 559-213-9430, and visit cleanmasterflood.com. Doctor in Sukasa allows you to connect with your doctor when you need a quick treatment. Avoid a trip to a medical clinic or emergency room and connect by video with your doctor from your home, work, or anywhere. Just go to drinsukasa.com on your phone, tablet, or computer. Dr. in Sukasa provides quality care that is convenient, bilingual, and affordable, so you are never left without access to health care. Visit drinsukasa.com today.
We forget about the higher good of food, right? You're growing a product that people enjoy really all over the world. I mean, how does that make you feel?
I think about that all the time. I think about the families sitting around a table, enjoying a meal. I just see that what we do brings families together.
I mean, we're blessed. We're in paradise for food.
The Kern family of the Kern Family Farm invites you to eat delicious, nutritious, organic produce available at the Gnarly Carrot. Located at 32954 Road 222 in North Fork, California, the Gnarly Carrot is a local, natural, seasonally changing market offering a wide range of products from local Central Valley vendors. Get your caffeine fix, grab a smoothie, and support small businesses. Learn more at kernfamilyfarm.com and visit the Gnarly Carrot today. Are you thinking of selling your home? Since 2004, the Souza Group, brokered by eXp Realty, has specialized in premier property listings and sales located in the Clovis Unified and North Fresno markets. The Souza Group will do their best to exceed your expectations. Visit clovisunifiedhomes.com.
Welcome back to New Thought Talk. I hope you've enjoyed what we've been covering today. I didn't get much through this chapter in the book we're going through, but I didn't expect to either. I'm going to close, make this segment's going to be a little short due to time constraints today. That's why we started the show early, but I want to get through this last little bit here because in this particular chapter, Holmes is really, he's taking time to get into the understanding of psychology at the time that he wrote this. And like I said in the beginning, it's important. We've learned more since then, but it's still germane, but I'm going to kind of skip by some of it to move forward because I want to catch this before we close. He says, in our consciousness, thoughts and emotions can fester in the mind like barbs in flesh. And he says, if this is true, why should it seem strange to speak of psychic surgery and mental healing? The deep phases of the subjective life, which some psychologists call the unconscious mind, hidden almost entirely from conscious thought, are active, creative agencies working for good or ill. And that lives within us. There's that part of us in the subjective or subconscious side that Jung refers to as the shadow. And, one of his ideas was that the mind of man, particularly the subconscious mind of man, was kind of like a tree, and its roots go down deep into this shadow where only what we might say, evil lives. And I don't doubt Jung's understanding of that, but I do believe we don't have to make that journey into the roots of our consciousness, that we can choose to go upward. That's where humanity is poised to move at this point. We've been living in that, if you will, kind of that state between trunk and roots, and every once in a while someone will move upward in the tree to a higher level, but most of humanity lives at that. It's time to move forward. We have information today that feeds us knowledge, that shows us ways, and we can put new tools or old tools that have been rediscovered into practice in our lives so that we can make that journey within ourselves. And so Holmes goes on, he says, man is made up, or humanity, if you will, is made up the sum total of their conscious and subconscious thoughts, plus what they inherit from their ancestors and from what he calls race thought. Okay? Plus, and this is important, he says, a spiritual inwardness. Our trouble is not derived from life itself, but from the use we have made of it. We being humanity as a whole. Life itself, okay, exists in its fullness at the center of our being. Life itself. You know, we say there's one life. That life is God. That life is our life now. In previous shows, I've talked about this idea of life as one energy that exists. It's never died. It's just constantly expanded itself, seeking to express itself at ever greater and higher degrees, of which humanity became the highest level. That consciousness happened, I am happened, and then we move on. And like I said, we'll get into some of that because it's really beyond what Holmes understood. There has been some things that, you know, kind of lay this out in an incredible way. He says, life itself exists in its fullness at the center of our being. If it were never blocked, it would always flow through us as life, love, harmony, happiness, and success through each and every human being. Think about that. You want to see a greater world? Create a greater world within yourself. You want to see more good in the world? Create more good in yourself. We don't think that the world is going to have greater good unless we tell it how to have greater good. And in that, we don't realize how we have limited the greater good that is available to the world by not creating it within ourselves and then expressing it. He says there is an infinite reservoir of life within us. We may block its passage, we may shortcut its current, but the reservoir is still there, and the flow is always ready to resume its course when we reopen the channels. Our problem is not with life itself, but with the use we are making of it. There is a power and a presence for good in the universe that's available to each and every one of us. Most of us don't avail ourselves to it, or if we do, we do it at a limited degree. It's not about creating a world that works for everyone. It's about creating within everyone the ability to work within the world as it is, such that it becomes greater, such that livingness is expressed at higher degrees, such that the truth of who we are, all of us as humanity, the truth of who we are expresses. And at that level of expression, truly, there is no suffering. We don't need to have suffering in the world, but we need to stop buying into the belief that we have to have it. We need to stop giving expression to those things that demonstrate it. We need to know a greater good, and that knowingness must take place within ourselves. That's why I come here each week and share this. And I hope you watch these shows on a regular basis. You can go back through our archive in YouTube, New Thought Talk on Facebook. It's available there. If you want to copy, share, feel free to. If you want to email me, feel free to. I answer questions. If I've said something during this show or any other show that you want to have a greater explanation a little more in depth, or maybe be pointed to resources where you can seek to find out more information for yourself, feel free to email me. I do respond, and I like hearing from you, and it really is good. Not easy sometimes. Life isn't meant to be easy. We're supposed to strive and to put out energy to express greater life. We're supposed to struggle, but we have to reframe how we see struggle, from seeing it as suffering, as seeing it as something from which we grow and move forward, because all life is God. If all life is God, it's got to be good. Maybe we don't understand it as individuals, but that understanding is available to us. And so, as you go through this week, my friends, know that the light of God surrounds you, the love of God enfolds you, the power of God protects you, and the presence of God watches over you. Because truly, wherever you are, God is there. And if God's there, it's all good. It's all great. Know that for yourself. Express a greater livingness this week, and I'll see you when we come back. Bye.